You said you'd come. Now let's hope you're not too late.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Long talks. Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Long talks. Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Long talks. Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it.
Welcome to Jumanji.
Hello to everyone listening. Welcome to another Is It Worth a Tenner podcast review from Wulong Talks. Hi, my name's Jason. I'm the host of the Wulong Talks podcast. And if you've been following us for a while, then as you know, I like to do these movie reviews every once in a while, and I've started to do a couple. If you haven't heard any of the previous ones, you can find them all on our SoundCloud page. So if you head to soundcloud.com and look for Wulong Talks, then you'll find all of our movie reviews listed there. I'll be adding some more as we go along as well. So if you have any suggestions or things that you want me to review, then I'll let you know how to do that after this recording. But first off, I hope you all are good. I hope you've all had good weeks. We're getting closer to Christmas, and we're getting ready to do our Christmas special podcast this year as well. So we're really looking forward to that. We've got some great things lined up for you, so stay tuned for that. But the reason why you're here is because you want to know what I think of the movie adaptation of the manga series Blade for the Immortal, don't you? Well, I think it's pretty darn good. Now we're going to get into the review. As I do with all of these reviews, I don't give any spoilers away, so don't worry, I'm not going to give away any information that you wouldn't be able to pick up from any trailers or any websites or any other reviews that you've seen. So nothing is going to be given away here. I'll just give you the basics, and then I'll let you know what I think, and then you can make a decision for yourselves on whether you go and see it or not. Now, Blade of the Immortal, as I mentioned at the top, is an adaptation of a manga series that was written some time ago, quite a way back, in fact. Thinking off the top of my head, it was around the 2000s. I mean, certainly that's when I read it. It was around sort of 2001 was when I read the series. And it's a very, very popular series. I mean, certainly not as much as some of the others for those of you listening who are familiar with kind of manga and things like that. It may not necessarily be as much in the popular conscience as it was, but it certainly was a very big deal on its release. So, excuse me. So yeah, it's a very, very popular series. So the movie adaptation coming at this time is kind of struck me as a bit odd, really, when I first heard about this, which was last year, because as I said, it's just not really in the consciousness at all. But I'm glad they did it, because the movie is awesome, folks. It's really one of the most enjoyable movie or anime to movie sort of adaptations, manga to movie adaptations rather, that I've seen in quite some time. This movie manages to get a lot more right than it gets wrong, both in terms of the way that it adapts its manga and just as a movie experience as a whole. It's really entertaining. It's surprisingly deep. There's a lot of different ideas and different themes that the movie touches upon and kind of explores in a way as well, in a way which the manga perhaps does, but does slightly differently. But it works, it comes together very well. The reason why it comes together so well, I think, in part, is because of the direction. Now, this movie is directed by a guy called Takashi Miike, who is a name that you might be familiar with. He's done quite a few movies. In fact, reading up on this, he's just completed 100 movies, which is an astonishing achievement, really, when you consider it. And for a long time, Miike was considered, especially in the West here, something of a bad boy of world cinema. Some of you may remember the movie that he released a couple of years ago called Ichi the Killer, which was an adaptation of an anime and a popular manga series also. And that was a movie, I mean, again, depending on how old all of you are who are listening to this, caused a lot of controversy back in the day because it was an extremely violent film. and very graphic film as well. Although not so much more than the source material it came from. To be fair, if you know Ichi the Killer, the manga or the anime, you know that that book is violent, and you know that anime was violent. But it was a very literal translation of the violence that you got from that. And that was a film that caused a lot of controversy when it came out. I still don't think a uncut version of that movie is available in the UK. So yeah, it was quite a controversial movie. And then going back, even before that, he released a horror comedy movie called Audition, which is still one of the most creepy and disturbing movies I've ever seen. If you're a horror fan listening to this and you haven't seen Audition, I beg you to go and hunt that movie down, because it really is in fact, I would say it's kind of the birth of movies like Hostel and things like that. They kind of came out of what Miike did with Audition. But the difference between, what Miike was doing with Audition and Hostel was that, with Audition, there's actually something that feels like it has heart and humanity to it, whereas Hostel just felt like exploitation. But anyway, we're not here to talk about those. We're here to talk about Blade and Immortal. So sorry for getting sidetracked there, but I just wanted to give you some background into who was directing this movie. Now, Miike has got a really, really keen eye for these Chambara tales. He recently did an adaptation a few years ago, or a movie a couple of years ago, called 13 Assassins, which was a big hit with the critics and with audiences. A really, really great movie in the spirit of, some of the classic samurai movies that you would have seen in the past. Some really, really phenomenal work that he did on that movie. And with Blade of the Immortal, in terms of the visual style and the things that he's developed in 13 Assassins, that's very much evident and in play here. But what he also does very well as well is marry in some of the visual elements that came in from the manga and from the anime. So all of the characters in it actually look and feel like characters from the page. They actually, feel like characters that you would have seen in the actual anime itself. So you get a real kind of a real sense of connection with the characters if you're familiar with them. Now, if you're not familiar with the anime or the manga, don't worry, because this is not a movie where you have to know all of these things about all these background characters. You don't. One of the great things about this movie is the fact that I found it so accessible. It's so easy for anybody to pick up exactly what the story is about, what these characters are about, what their motivations are, and where they're going. It's quite a simple tale in the way that it's told, and the key sort of themes here really are things like revenge, which is often a very common theme in movies, and redemption and finding a way to redeem oneself for their past mistakes and sins. And the main character of this movie, Manji, is a guy who very much is somebody searching for redemption. Early on in the movie, he commits a crime. He kills a number of people, and as a result of that, he's then forced to go on the run with his sister. His sister is killed in a confrontation with some local bounty hunters. He kills them all, and then as he kills them, he suffers many sort of wounds and some quite serious ones. As he's dying on the floor, he's then visited by a monk who basically says to him, "I can make you immortal. If you want to carry on living, I can let you live." So this monk grants him the ability to be able to live, and subsequently he becomes a very difficult man to kill. Now, at first that seems like a great thing, but then on the flip side of it, he, as time kind of passes in the movie and you get up to the present day, or the point where the plot is kind of really getting into things, you realize that he's become, a very lonely person, because he's lived for so many years, and he's never really found any peace. He's probably seen people around him die, and so he's become quite a lost, sort of lonely soul. He then crosses paths with a young girl named Rin, whose family are ruthlessly killed by the villain of the piece, who is a young samurai who has a style and a fighting ethos and a philosophy that he wants to make the most popular across all of Japan. This is at a time in Japanese history during sort of the Tokugawa period where samurai were, the ruling class, and you had shogunates, and you had basically people who were like, you had a very hierarchical class structure in Japanese society at that point. And the samurai were around sort of the top of the food chain, basically. And these guys, led by the villain, basically don't want to have any of the formalities that Japanese society currently has. They want to fight the way they want to fight. They want to live the way they want to live. They want to learn whatever swordsmanship style they choose, and they come into conflict with a lot of these traditional schools within Japan at that time. So they go around challenging the masters of these schools and killing them, and then killing any of the students who don't want to go along with that. And Rin's family are also samurai and also part of those schools, and they come into conflict with him and they die. So Rin bumps into our hero Manji, and she convinces Manji to help her try and get revenge against his family. And then the movie kind of spills out from there, really, and their kind of conflict between Manji and Rin, and the Itori Ryu, which is the name of the collective of bad guys in the piece. And it leads to just some really, really brilliant action scenes. If you're a big fan of samurai movies at all, and you like to see well-staged, sword fights and things like that, then this is the movie for you, man. It's got loads and loads of that. It's quite bloody, so I will say for people who are squeamish about that kind of thing, it is kind of bloody. I mean, it's nowhere near as bloody as some of the things that Takashi Miike has done, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of violent. It's an 18 certificate here in the UK, and it's 18 for a reason. There is a lot of blood, so yeah, if you are disturbed by that, then maybe you might want to think twice about this movie. But even if that is something that concerns you, I would urge you to at least give this movie a try, because there's so much here. There's so much depth to this story. The performances are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, you've got in the lead role of Manji, you've got Takagawa Kimura. He's really, really good. He adds like a lot of depth that you wouldn't have expected from a character like this. And what I love about Japanese movies and Eastern movies in particular is that what a lot of these actors do is, because the script doesn't have them give so much exposition and explain how they're feeling in the way that Western movies do, a lot of these actors learn to use facial expressions or body language to communicate how their character is feeling and what they're going through. And that's something that Kimura does fantastically well as Manji throughout this film. There's moments where he's actually really funny as well. There's actually some really good comedic moments in there and comedic lines, but he captures that kind of communicating without using words in a way that's really fascinating to watch, just as a movie fan, because we're used to things being done such a way over here. Hana Sigusaki is, sorry if I've butchered her name, plays Rina Sano. She's really good as well. Again, like, she's one of those types of characters that you could imagine in a Western movie. She could become quite annoying quite quickly, because often when you put kids in these types of movies, it can go, one of two ways. They can either play it really well or devolve into kind of streaking and shouting and pouting and sulking. And there's certainly a certain amount of that with the character of Rin here, but it's done again in a way that's very skillful. And the performance from Sigusaki is again very much based in showing emotion through facial expressions and showing it through body language and showing it through the performance in physical ways rather than just kind of stating the obvious, which is another thing I like about this movie. It does respect its audience. It doesn't just state things and tell you things that you can already work out for yourself. It says, you're a smart person, you're here watching this movie, we don't need to tell you, we'll just show you what's going to happen. And that's what I really enjoyed about this movie as well. Um, Aside from that, there are lots of other characters that flitter in and out. Those who have seen the manga and have seen the anime will know who these characters are because they're all pretty much present. I don't think there's anybody major from the series who's left out of the movie adaptation. If there is, let me know, but I'm pretty sure there isn't. I think they covered just about everyone, and that's another thing that they've done really well, as I mentioned at the beginning, is they've managed to condense everything into a 2 hour, 25-minute movie, which is crazy, really, when you think about it. But they've pulled it off fantastically well here. So yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and you don't feel shortchanged. So for me, I would say if you wanted to spend a tenner on this, and you were asking me if it was worth a tenner, then I'd say yes, it is worth a tenner. I think people who are fans of samurai movies, who are fans of anime, who are fans of manga, who are fans of action movies will get a kick out of all of those elements of this film. But those who are more open-minded and are less inclined by those things, but maybe just want a good movie, go along, because you'll get some balance, you'll get some good character work as well. You'll get some really interesting visuals. There's a lot of interesting things that Miike does with this movie in terms of camera placement, in terms of use of black and white and color schemes, mise en scène, and all of that kind of thing. There's a lot of things going on visually with the movie. So you'll get something out of it as well. Yeah, definitely go and see it. As I said, the only warning I would have is if you are of the squeamish type, then maybe think about it. Watch the Red Band trailer online. I believe it's on YouTube. The Red Band trailer is basically an uncut trailer. Check that out. See if it kind of feels like the kind of thing you can put up with. If it does, great, go and see it. If it doesn't, understand. Not everybody can handle that kind of thing on the screen, and that's perfectly understandable. But otherwise, don't let it cloud your judgment, because there is a real diamond of a movie here. Definitely, as I said, one of the best sort of anime to movie adaptations that I've seen in a very, very long time. Really well done. So go and check it out. Absolutely. Okay, that's going to do it for me. Thanks a lot for joining me, and thanks a lot for listening in. If you like the review, then please let me know. You can find me on Twitter at Wulong Talks, on Facebook at Wulong Talks Podcast, and you can email us as well, which is at wulongtalkspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace.